what's good with y'all, man? My name is Tej, and in this video I'm gonna show y'all how to make a Baton Rouge-esque beat for NBA Youngboy for his recent project, The Last Slimeto. As always, I made this beat from scratch, so with all that being said, let's just jump right into the sample. So as y'all can see from the stems here, there's really only 4 main components. There's the Rhodes piano, the guitar, bass guitar, sound effects, and the organ. And I added all of those melodies in that order. And the tempo for this sample was 162 beats per minute. For my first sound, I opened up Keyscape and I got this chorus Rhodes preset. The MIDI for this is using the key of E minor, and the only chords that I used for this pattern were E minor, B minor, and A minor. The chord basis of this is just the E minor going down to B minor. And if you want to use this for any scale, you just construct a minor chord using the root note and a minor chord using the 5th note in the scale. And I just kind of hummed out like a melody that I was thinking of in my head, and I laid those out as the root notes. I'm just going to go through how I built the chords. So starting off with E minor, we have the root note, which is E, and making a normal minor triad, I copied the root note up by 3 half steps, and then copied that middle note up by 4 half steps. And then I just threw in octaves of E also just to give the chord a little more depth. And then for the next chord, I used the 5th note in the scale and just made the same minor triad using the same pattern of just copying it up by 3 half steps and then 4. And then for the last one, I moved my root note down by 2 half steps and then just made another minor triad. And then I just copied these 2 chords over for the next 4, and then I just inverted this one, or just moved the top note down by 1 octave and I deleted the top octave. And then after that, I just used the root notes and just made a kind of bottom melody that was a little more subtle and just gave this melody a little bit of an underlying rhythm to it. So I routed that Rhodes to a mixer track, and I only put 1 effect on it, which is the EQ, and it's just a low shelf to cut out some of the key noises, and then just a bit of a dip in the mids to cut out some of the muddy frequencies. So once I had this, I ended up putting in my guitar pattern, and as you can see here, just a whole bunch of different clips that I recorded. So what I'll do is I'll go to my mixer track here, I'll select from my audio interface, and then I'll just add my typical guitar mixer preset. So it's just a tuner, an EQ just to cut out some of the picking noises, and then a couple of guitar rigs. So the first one is the right in the middle preset with the gain turned down. Typically it's the range of like 8 to 15%. And then on top of that, I'll put another guitar rig on it on the Luke's lap steel preset, and I'll turn off everything except for this reverb plugin at the bottom, and I just turn down the decay and the pre-delay. And so that usually gives me kind of like a clean and airy vibe for my guitar recordings. I like to have it where my guitar records externally, so it just records the raw input, and then from there I can just route it to this recording mixer track, and then I can adjust some of the parameters. That way it just sounds a little cleaner. And a pretty easy strategy that I use to quantize my guitar clips is I go to the beginning of each of these notes, I'll zoom in really close, and I'll hold shift and then click with the cut tool, and I'll do this for all of the significant notes, and I'll trim out any excess that I have in front of it. And then once I've done that, I'll go to my snap to grid and I'll set it to line, and I'll highlight the notes that I'm working with. I used the command of Shift Q to quick quantize the notes in the arrangement and then make necessary adjustments after that. Once I effectively just scrapbooked all of my different audio clips together, I went into the mixer track where I added the effects. I armed it and then selected the 8 measures where I had my pattern, and then went back to the mixer and hit Alt R and then hit start to render out the clip. So putting my finished guitar clip with what I have with the Rhodes so far, it sounds like this. So after I put in the lead guitar, I put in the bass guitar, which I went into X-Band. I got the next fretless preset from the basses section. And with this one, I pretty much just copied the root notes of what I had in my original Rhodes melody. I just threw in a few like transition or accent notes just to make it sound like it was played live or something that's just a little more interesting. And after I did my bass guitar, I put in my sound effects. The first one is this wah sound effect. And the second one I put in is also a wah, but it's slightly different. And for these, I recommend putting the mode to stretch and then having a set time stretch. If you have it really high or really low, it'll decay for the same amount of time. And once I had my sound effects in, I went into Analog Lab and I got this Church Chords organ preset, and this is the last thing that filled out the rest of the melodies. And if these look familiar, that's because these are the same chords that I had in the first pattern, and I just copied and pasted them into here. And for effects on that, I put on a low cut to cut out some of the lower muddier frequencies. And then I rendered this out as an audio clip, and I went to my final arrangement and I automated the volume on it. I didn't like how long the notes were decaying and I didn't want to just cut them off. So what I did is I just automated the volume down on these longer decay ones, just so it sounds a little bit more natural. So once I had all my stems in the arrangement, I went to the audio clip menus on all of them and I pitched them all up by 200 cents. So the final key of this sample is an F sharp minor. So once I did that, I took each of the stems and arranged the final loop. And then I rendered it out as an audio clip and opened it up in a new project file. So once I imported it into my new FLP, I set my project tempo to 162, and then I put the mode on stretch and pitched it up by another 100 cents. So the final track and the drums are in the key of G minor. So for my first drum sound, I got this clap. I put it on the third beat of every measure, except for the fourth and eighth, where I just put an accent clap on the end of one. After that, I put in my hi-hat pattern. And for the most part, it's pretty much like a two-step, except with a bunch of velocity changes to add some bounce to it. And for all these rolls, I believe I used the 1/2 step snap to grid. For the last one, I think I used 1/6 beat. And then next I put in this perc, and I put it on the end of the fourth beat on the first and fifth measures. After that, I added my snare sound. I put these in like typical trap drum spots. I didn't add any rolls or anything. I tried to keep it as simple as possible. After the snare, I added this perc, and I just put this at the end of each of the fourth and eighth measures. And then I put in my open hat. And this primarily just layers with the 808 and some of the other drum sounds. And then lastly, I put in my 808 sound. And similar to the bass guitar, I followed the root notes pretty closely, and I just tried to keep it fairly simple. There's already a lot going on melodically with the sample, and on top of that, there's already a lot of drum sounds, so I tried to keep it fairly simple. That's going to do it for me. I hope you enjoyed this one and found it pretty helpful. Be sure to leave any recommendations or feedback in the comments. That's going to wrap it up for this one. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.
Roll up, Tess.